Today is a special video right here. I got my man Will right here. He jumped on the Skype call with me tonight at all nights on a Friday night. So this is a very special pleasure to have you on here. Will is with Zuniga Financials and also Zphase. Will, you want to give him a little breakdown of what Zuniga Financials does and what Zphase does and everything like that is?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's going to be your one-stop shop for all your business and personal financial needs, from credit card processing to key man insurance, buy-sell agreements, even on a personal level, I can do home mortgage protection,
Wow.
retirement planning, income replacement. So you guys need anything on the financial side, you guys give me a holler.
So, Will, you've been working with me on the high risk processing now for what, about 3 years now, right? Been going on
Right.
about three. Will and I have a good business working relationship. So, but Will, I definitely want to say, man, it's been a pleasure, and I do co-sign working with you and all that on here. So, for all the viewers that are watching, this is not just a fly-by-night video. This is definitely somebody that I know knows this stuff, or else I wouldn't even waste the time making the video with this right here. So, Will, when we talk about high risk processing, what does that actually include? What is high risk processing?
So high risk processing would be any instance where you are going to be processing a high risk transaction. For example, any online sale, you could be selling t-shirts is going to be considered high risk.
Really?
And the reason for that is because you're looking at your customer face to face. When you start putting in other factors like product type,
Right.
demographics, drop shipping, things like that, there's just going to increase the risk factor. So again, just because you're selling candles doesn't necessarily mean that a processor may not want to treat you like a high risk,
Right.
because at the end of the day, any e-commerce is considered high risk.
Interesting, very interesting. So I don't think that's really touched on too much, So, and that, once again, you just said that's because it's a virtual sale. It's an e-commerce sale, and the card's not present, right? Is that the terminology in the industry, correct?
Right. Card not present. Exactly.
Gotcha. So I know for the e-com industry, I don't think that this is touched on a lot right here, but I've had a lot of processors shut me down on basic drop shipping stores, PayPal especially. When we're talking e-commerce here, we're talking drop shipping. You're saying that high risk processing for somebody that is experienced starting up an e-commerce store is better off going with a high risk processor and having secure ground, so they know they're not going to be terminated in 2 months or 3 months or 4 months. Correct? Am I understanding correct?
Right. Yeah. At the end of the day, you want to align your business with a processor that's going to really be able to sustain a scalable, viable solution. Many times processors will try to limit your monthly revenue, what they'll allow for you to process, which obviously you don't have restrictions. You don't want to have your business on any sort of constraint that's going to keep you guys from growing. So having a processor that truly understands your business, the industry, the business model, your product, and has knowledge and insight, is really going to make a difference for you and the growth of your business.
Right. I definitely see that. So what kind of businesses do you really accept? What are the main ones?
I have a niche for smoking accessories, so water pipes, bongs,
Vapes.
silicone containers, CBD, vape, e-liquids, mods, accessories. That's really my territory. That's my playing field.
Right, and that's awesome because Shopify clearly does not allow any of that stuff right there. They will not, and I believe Shopify's processor is Stripe, so any of those businesses you just listed right there automatically are eliminated from processing with Shopify right away. And that's just for the viewers watching. Anybody that's watching this, if you didn't know, Shopify is partnered with Stripe, and they do not accept any high-risk business of that nature. You will process for a week and they will shut you down and they will freeze your payments. So with high-risk processing, what does that look like? How do you onboard that, and what does that process usually look like?
So the process is typically presenting it to the bank. So we would do an application. We collect some supporting documents, which is rather simple. I mean, an ID, voided check, 3 months bank statements for the business, and a utility bill to prove the address. If you're a startup, we won't need processing statements, current credit card processing statements. But if you are already accepting payments, it's always best to submit those. It'll allow me to give you, the best deal for your business individually, and also it allows me to show the bank the processing bank that backing bank, whatever you want to call them,
Right.
that you have experience with credit card transactions, which would also work in your
Gotcha.
favor as well.
Gotcha. So
From there, go ahead.
no, I was just thinking because with the if you have the bank statements, does that help? That does help you get a better processing rate, making the bank feel more comfortable with the security, or did I misunderstand that?
Not necessarily. The bank statements is more so to show that you're in good standing
Gotcha.
financially. If they see that you have a trend of always going negative, or if they see that you don't really have a positive balance,
All right.
they may frown upon it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to get the account.
Right. You have multiple options
Many
also. It's like one bank denies it, you're going to be able to move it to try it at another bank, and thus forth, and thus
Right.
forth. Right. Yeah. Gotcha.
And then many times too, the banks, they just want to make sure that your bank balances are in order, even if it's a zero. At least it's not negative.
Right. Right. I got you. That makes sense. So
Many
how does that go about then with the processing rates? How do you factor in the processing rates as being high risk? It's a little bit more than normal. I think normal is what 2.9 right now for most parts, plus like the 30% process like per charge or something of that nature, something like that.
Right. So yeah. So if you went and you process with, like, let's say PayPal or Square,
Right.
Stripe, they're usually notorious for a flat rate,
Right.
which is always going to benefit your business. You have your lower end cards, like a debit card, for example.
Right.
The cost on that could be as low as 1.99. So why pay 3% for that?
Right.
I mean, again, it's not at the end of the day, what it comes down to is aligning yourself with the processor that really understands the business model.
Gotcha.
If you go to a traditional high risk processor, chances are they're going to want to charge you 3.5%.
Right.
But the experience that I have and the relationships that I have with the banks, they know that the business I'm bringing them is going to be good business. I work very diligently with all my merchants.
Right.
My support team does as well to ensure that merchants know how to utilize gateways, how to utilize their fraud controls, the fraud tools that are implemented in the gateway to protect them from chargebacks, which chargebacks usually will play a major factor in a high risk scenario too.
Right.
So it's important that your processor is supporting you in that sense, and also too that the merchant can cooperate and utilize those tools and resources that they have efficiently.
No doubt. Now, I want to jump on the chargebacks, but I'm gonna get down there just here in a minute. So once you filled out the paperwork and all the stuff, and I remember you sent me over like a checklist and all that stuff right there that made it real simple for me. I was able to just look back at there, get all the one documents, check there, and go to the next one, which was huge. And I'm glad that you sent that over for me. But what does that look like for the installation? Are there installation fees, setup fees? What does that typically look like for the merchant account?
Nah, so typically you'll have gateway. The gateway is really the only setup fee
Okay.
that you would have to pay as far as like setups goes. That typically can be $50, but we work with different gateways. Some gateways charge it, others don't.
All right.
So as far as setup costs, there's nothing really to have to worry about. So like the CBD, certain industries will require fees per se that would allow you to get the merchant account, but it's not like it's going to be some sort of cost associated with equipment or anything like that.
Right. So, okay, cool. That's perfect. So you touched on it real quick. What is a chargeback?
So a chargeback would be when a customer goes back to their bank, their issuing bank, the one that's backing their transaction, and they tell their bank that they didn't
Get the
authorize the charge. Typically, that's their claim.
I've had a lot of chargebacks, and I know that a lot of them are people that show delivered, and they might even want to just say at the end of the day they want the product and the money. You know what I mean? That's a huge issue for me. But at the end of the day, chargebacks are essential to the good standing of the account, like you said. So how many chargebacks? What does that look like before the account is like red flagged? How does that look?
You typically want to keep a 1%. You want to keep it under 1%.
Okay.
Usually, high risk processing will allow for about 1%. We actually, being in the industry that we are and the position that we have with our banks, can be a little bit more lenient. I've seen some accounts go up to 2, maybe 3%, which is actually pretty bad at that point.
All right.
But usually it kind of comes down to us as a processor getting involved, reaching out to the merchant and saying, hey, what's going on?
All right.
How can we fix this? And then at that point, we'll make sure that the gateway is properly set up to maybe block out IP addresses,
All right.
or we can block out individual country. Maybe you're getting hit from the same customer over and over because they know that you're vulnerable. So we'll catch that. And it's just a matter of correcting it. Many times just communication between the processor and the merchant and utilizing the gateway properly can eliminate chargebacks.
Gotcha. Do you got any advice on winning the chargebacks at all?
I think it would kind of come down to I know it's hard being an e-commerce business, but know your customer, and many times that could be hard. But things like ensuring that the address matches winning. I mean, it's tough. I could say as a processor, it comes down to what the customer says.
Right.
If the customer says, I didn't authorize the charge, it doesn't matter whether they got it, where you shipped it.
All right.
They didn't order it. So at that point, the bank will see it as a stolen card that ran a fraudulent transaction. But if your customer says, hey, I didn't get it, clearly he admits that he bought it. Right. So you can't go back and say, hey, I didn't authorize it. So if you can show proof that you shipped it, you got your maybe you signed for delivery, or you can show that, the address and the ABS hit on point, and you match the name to the billing address and the customer and all that. That'll help you too.
Gotcha.
And also too, that's why you got to have like your refunds and returns policies on the website as well, which is part of the checklist that you had mentioned.
Yes.
When I'm sending that out, I tell all my merchants, you got to have XYZ on your website. And that will typically be your terms and conditions, privacy policy, shipping and returns, and a refund policy, and then full contact information.
Gotcha.
The banks like seeing that. If your customer has any doubts, if maybe the order's taking a little bit longer than expected, or he gets damaged product, he knows where to call, who to reach out to, where to ship back to. So those type of things would help you too, because let's say he goes back and he's like, hey, I needed to send this back to him, and they wouldn't return my call. And on their website, the return address, the bank can look at you like, hey, well, how was you supposed to return it? And then you can lose that as well. So that's part of what we do, and we put in place and make sure the merchants understand to avoid those type of problems.
Gotcha. And now you want to answer every chargeback you get, though. You don't want to just neglect them. When you get a chargeback, you want to respond to every single last one, right?
Right. You typically have about 14 days to respond to a chargeback dispute, or to dispute a chargeback. So usually you'll get notified in writing via email, or you'll get a letter, and they'll let you know saying, hey, XYZ customer has disputed this.
Right, with the 4 digits on the last, so that way you can pull up the order and check. But now the chargeback accompanies a fee too, if I remember correctly, right? It has a $15 fee that accompanies every time a customer charges back, and that's like what, a processing fee from the bank to.
So you have the $15 fee is a retrieval fee. That's the bank pretty much reaching out and letting you know, hey, this is the issue. As long as you can show proof and you win the chargeback, it stays at that. It doesn't officially become a chargeback. Gotcha. If it does become a chargeback, let's say you neglect to respond, or you let it go and you don't care and you're just ignoring them, then at that point becomes a chargeback. It'll become an official ding on your processing record, right? And then you'll pay the $35 chargeback fee.
Gotcha. For the viewers watching it, it's been my experience that if you're using Shopify, I typically screenshot the order preferences, and just like you said, it says the IP address was 5 miles away from this location. The address verification both matched. So usually when I screenshot that, usually I hear something back within like a month, and typically I've had pretty good luck. But I think you were telling me last time, it's AMX that usually is more privy to giving the customer back refund and not winning chargebacks, with American Express more than likely, correct?
Yeah, American Express is pretty notorious for defending their
Oh,
customers.
yeah, gotcha.
So they'll allow their customer to dispute or charge back uh, up to 6 months after the transaction.
That's right.
So
Gotcha.
it's something to keep in mind. Always keep records of transactions
Right.
across the board with any card brand,
Right.
But American Express can typically,
Yeah.
they'll allow their customer to charge back up to 6 months
That's
later.
a big window right there, 6 months, especially for a business owner. Damn, you've already shipped the product to lose the product to have to pay the charge back. You get double whammy right there. But
Chances are you may have
yeah,
even spent the money too.
yeah, true story. So, with high risk processing, what does that look like? Would you have to have good credit to have it? Can you have if bad credit? Does that affect it, or how does that look?
No, not necessarily. I mean, typically I can get somebody approved with a credit score of 580.
Awesome.
As low as 580. Usually anywhere between 580 to about 600 is fair game.
Fair game.
Anything above 600, you should have no
No
issues.
issues. That's good news right
Yeah.
there. And what does that look like? Is high risk processing strictly for people in the United States, or can you get people in Canada and other countries? Can you onboard them, or how does that look?
Yeah. So many times we got to have either a tax ID, a social,
Gotcha.
and if that isn't available, then we got to do. I can get creative, and sometimes people have partners that are here in the states, and the partner is willing
Right.
to sign.
Right.
So we could figure it out. It's definitely worth a conversation.
With a high risk account, what does that look like as far as payouts go? Is that next day funding? Is that 48-hour funding? Is that 10-day funding? What does that look like typically for the majority?
Usually, your payout will be 24 to 48 hours.
Okay. Gotcha.
Usually by default, you'll get boarded at 48 hours. But
Gotcha.
once we build some history and the banks get comfortable with your account,
All right.
we can go back and we can even request 24-hour funding.
Gotcha. And then what does it look like with a risk reserve? What does that typically look like?
So if your account would require a reserve,
Right.
many times we can do it without a reserve, but sometimes certain businesses or certain industries do require a reserve.
Right.
Those would be a 10% 6 month rolling reserve.
6 months.
There's
Okay.
different types.
Right.
Yeah, there is different kinds of reserves. Sometimes the terms are a little bit
Right.
different, but ours in general, for the most part, is going to be a 6 month rolling reserve.
Gotcha. And is that for majority of CBD businesses mainly, or does that affect majority of all? Because I mean, it really.
Well, I mean, yeah, no, I mean, we have some very irresponsible merchants that they'll just be selling some e-liquid, but they're very careless and very immature in their processing,
Gotcha.
and they cause attention, and the bank says, hey, we're going to have to slap a reserve on there, and the reserve is not, many times people kind of look at it as a disciplinary action. That's
Right.
not the case. The bank's really just trying to protect themselves, because if your customers come back 6 months later and you ghost and you just disappear and you close out
Right.
your bank accounts, the merchant account is now in limbo. If
Right.
your customers go back and say, hey, I bought a pallet of pipes from this guy,
Yeah.
or I bought 10,000 worth of e-liquid,
Right.
and or not even he bought it, he just said I never ordered this.
Right.
The bank's going to pay that 10,000. If they can't get it back from the merchant, the bank's got to pay that. So that's
Gotcha.
what the 10% reserve is,
Gotcha.
really to kind of help offset that risk, and kind of minimize that exposure that
Gotcha.
they're exposed. It's always your money. It
Right.
doesn't go anywhere. You will get it back at some
Right.
point.
And that,
It's
and that
either going to you'll either get it back at 180 days, or once you close your account.
Gotcha. And that can be reviewed again though. I mean, it could just when you onboard, it could be for a month, it could be for 3 months, and then it could be next day funding though, all depending upon variables of the account though. If I
Yeah,
understand correct.
everything just right. Exactly.
Right.
Many times we can do it without. We get people
Right.
set up. There's no delayed funding, no reserves. Many
Gotcha.
times, I would say 90% of the time, that's the case. But
Gotcha.
yeah, you do have your individuals that sometimes it's required. Either their financials aren't strong,
Right.
it could be a very weak business model. Maybe their credit isn't up to par.
Right.
So a few factors. But for the most part, we offer some solid merchant accounts.
Awesome. And then last question here, really. So when it comes to smoking related products, preferably ones that are related to the cannabis industry or CBD, what are the things that you do not want to have on your website when you're submitting a high risk account submission? What would that be?
Definitely don't want to have any claims that it's going to heal
Okay.
any sort of illness.
All right.
That's a big no. And that's really where, FDA, many times they don't, people don't realize that the FDA actually has guidelines
Right,
that
right.
what you can't, and many times people fall out of those guidelines, and that's where it becomes a problem. So I think a lack of knowledge on the bank's parts as well, and the processors, is what makes it like a high risk environment. But again, understanding the guidelines, understanding the rules, understanding the industry, the business types, the models, the products, can really make a big difference for the merchant when it comes down to actually growing and scaling their business. For the most part, we walk our merchants through everything from start to finish.
Yes.
I work with all my merchants directly as well.
Right.
So the face you're seeing is the face that's going to be taking care of you and representing you along the way. I have a great, team behind me, my support staff, from my admins to my tech support, my underwriters, risk assessment. They're all great. They're all seasoned veterans. They've all been doing it longer than I have. So it's a great support team that I have behind me. And we're really on a very solid foundation between the banks that we work with and sometimes even processors that we need to partner with.
No doubt. I know you're always easy to catch too. I know I never have any problems getting a hold of you. I know whenever I need to get a hold of you, you're within 2-3 minutes of a text. You're always prompt. I take my hat off to you, bro. You're way better than me. Way better than me.
Thank you. I think that I take pride in what I do, and one thing that I want to make sure my customers and my clients can have is a good night's sleep. And if that means that I got to be able to take a phone call on a Friday or on a Saturday morning, for the most part, all my merchants that I work directly with will end up having my mobile number. So I am just a text message away. A simple phone call, text message, and you have my full attention.
No doubt, I can co-sign that. So, well, that's pretty much all the questions I got. Is there anything else you'd like to add that we may not have covered, or anything else that may be privy to the topic?
Well, I'd love to add. You don't hesitate to reach out. You guys can visit my website, zphaseprocessing.com. You can drop me an email at info@zphase.com. And I'd love to engage, man. We can discuss the opportunity, whatever it is that you guys have on your end, whatever your concerns are. We can discuss it, and if I have an option for you, if I have a solution, we can run it. If not, it's okay, no obligation. But I'd love to hear from you guys.
We greatly appreciate you guys watching this video right here. If you got any questions, definitely drop them in the comments as well. We'll definitely be watching the comments and be responding to those as quick as possible. One thing that we do ask, though, if you do like this content right here, please hit that like button and please hit that subscribe button so we can continue to keep bringing you this type of content right here. Well, I really do appreciate your time on this Friday night, and I think you hit some major points. And anybody watching this, if you do have a drop shipping business, if you do have an e-commerce business that you know you're going to scale, especially going into Q4, please get your business on secure ground and reach out to Will. Will is a great person to touch bases with, and as you see, he knows his stuff right here. Any questions you guys got, drop them in the comments. Will, I thank you again.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, bro.
No doubt. We'll catch you guys next time.
If you like this video right here, please show some love and hit the like button. Also hit the subscribe and notification button to stay updated for the latest videos. New videos will be dropping Thursday, 9 p.m. Mountain Time, so please stay tuned.